Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Languth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
Hello everybody, my name is Alexander Greb. Welcome to this episode of Transformation Every Day, expert insights and stories on SAP and beyond. When we talk about entrepreneurship, the conversation often centers around startup founders hustling to build the next big tech unicorn. But what about entrepreneurs who build powerhouse SAP consulting firms from the ground up? Today, we're diving into a remarkable journey rarely told: how to build and grow a 1,600 people strong global SAP consulting company generating over 300 million euros in annual revenue. In this episode of Transformation Every Day, we're joined by Harald Sulovsky, founder and former CEO of CBS Corporate Business Solutions, and his successor Rainer Wittwen, the current CEO. Harald started his career as an SAP consultant back in 1990, long before SAP became the global giant it is today. From those early days, he nurtured a vision to create a consulting firm that would not only deliver technology solutions, but fundamentally transform business processes on a global scale. Together with Rainer, who began his journey at CBS as a young consultant, they share insights on navigating growth, sustaining culture, and driving innovation in an ever-evolving digital landscape. They discuss how CBS has remained profitable and visionary through decades of change, from SAP's early days to today's cloud and AI revolutions. This year, CBS, by the way, celebrates its 30th anniversary with a major event featuring SAP CEO Christian Klein, a true testament to CBS' place at the forefront of SAP consulting and innovation. So if you want to understand what it takes to scale a consulting business to a global level, maintain a strong company culture amidst rapid growth, and lead through continuous transformation, this episode is for you. Get ready for a deep dive into entrepreneurship beyond startups, the story of CBS, and the leadership that made it one of the most respected SAP consulting firms worldwide. All of that in this episode of Transformation Every Day.
Are you happy with this year? So far, it's beginning of May now, so first 4 months are in the books, and it looks quite promising. Overall economic situation is of course a bit uncertain, so I'm still glad that we are still kind of gaining big contracts. So big transformation projects are still out there, and we managed to basically get them. So that's why I'm quite happy.
There's two kinds of strategy to cope with situations like that on a organization side. Either do nothing and keep the money together, or say like, this is exactly the right time when we have to do things to get prepared for anything that comes behind that. Where do you see our customers at the moment?
Of course, you see both. There is, of course, skepticism out there, and then, people kind of hold together their money and see how they can really make sure that they get the basics right. But there are also other companies who really do invest and see, the strategic necessity of kind of transforming the company. Not only technology-wise, but mostly, business model-wise. And also, of course, prepare for the future in terms of agility and resilience, in a sense. So basically, starting to the next generation, if you will. So that's also happening, and I doubt it a bit. If this still happens, kind of end of last year, looking in Germany still into a kind of the third year of a recession. So are companies really willing to invest? And the good news is, yes, they are. And there are people and companies out there who really invest into their future with, of course, new digitized models. And that's exactly our business. And it's not just a technology thing, but it's far more a business transformation thing.
Which is a very wonderful segue for the things we want to talk today, which is transformation, generations, growth. We have two very, very special guests today here. On my left side, we see Harald Sulovsky, who is the founder and former CEO of CBS Corporate Business Solutions, who managed CBS for 25 years,
26
years, and his successor, Rainer Wittwen, who is not really a newcomer in this position too, but for long, how do you have the position now? 5 years, I think?
No, 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, good 3 years.
3 years, yeah. And this is exactly what we want to talk about. We want to talk about growth. We want to talk about entrepreneurship with people who manage to get more out of it than just a startup phase. CBS at the moment has 1,600 people working for 300 million euro, something like that in revenue. All of those are public numbers. But everything has to start from zero. And that's where we want to hear the story of that today from Rainer and from Harald. Harald, you have, of course, like so many founders, you had a past history before making the decision of starting the company. Can you give us a few sentences about what you did before you made the decision of saying, like, I built a consulting empire of 1,600 people?
Yeah, I started my business career at SAP in 1990 as a consultant. And I started my career in a department which supported international customers in their global SAP projects. I worked there for about 5 years. So started as a consultant, and at that point in time, SAP was quite small and the consulting department was growing quite fast. So after 2 years, I got the possibility to take responsibility for international projects and worked then for international corporations. And during working for SAP, the idea for setting up an own company grew step by step. And well, I can tell you why we created at the end corporate business solutions. And we started with another name. We started with Microsoft Business Solutions. There was, first of all, passion, because I liked to be a consultant. I liked to do to improve business processes. I saw myself as a business process consultant using technology to improve business process landscapes. And this is what I wanted to do. And when I was working as a project manager for SAP, I always had to start or to enter projects which were a disaster. So I have always to somehow to build up, to set up projects from zero and help to bring them forward. And by this, I thought about why do we have so many disaster projects out there? What can we do better to go faster through a project? What can we do that budgets of projects are not getting bigger and bigger? And what can we do that we are really delivering business process solutions, not an IT solution, not something which is just working from a technical perspective, what really brings value to the customer, more efficient processes, more efficient process landscapes. And because I was working for international corporations, another dimension of problem solving was how can we organize big, large projects which involve not only one plant or one corporation, but really are global projects. We have to build solutions not for one country. We have to build solutions for many, many countries.
If I may jump in on that,
yeah, sure.
Already, what you say. What is really interesting now was when you mentioned, and we are talking about the time 1992, 93.
Yes.
So this was more or less R3 back then was in his infant status, more or less. So customers were either nowhere or on R2, and the move was from R2 to R3. But still, you mentioned about that, let's say, fight and the struggle in the setup between, is this now an IT initiative or an IT project, or is this now a strategic project, a strategic business initiatives? So which is basically the same discussions that we still have 30 years later.
Yes, I think in general the world hasn't changed too much. I mean, it's like this.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit for sure, but in the general discussions and the general problems haven't changed, I think.
But when you call the startup, or how it's called now, startup, or your new company, when you call it MicroSub, which is more or less the mini-me of the company where you're coming from, why that name? What was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, what was the motivation? First of all, the question was why did we set up the company? I mean, I love to work for SAP. SAP, I was sure, was the best company in the world from professional perspective, but also from the culture. I love the culture at SAP because I saw many other cultures out there because I was working as a consultant for a lot of companies. So I loved that company. But the thing is, SAP was a software company and I was a consultant, and consulting was not the core business. So having ideas how to improve consulting, how to better set up projects, how to develop methodologies to manage projects in a better way. That was not the core business of SAP. And maybe your question is, why didn't you move to another consulting company? I didn't see another consulting company which was really thinking about things I thought myself. And well, I came together with my colleague Tarek Kramer, and together we built the idea. We do it on our own. We have ideas how we would improve consulting, how we would like to manage projects on a better way, and how we are more efficient and more effective and things like that. And this is why at the end we set up our own company. We thought the only way to do what we want to do is we must set up our own company. And Microsoft, now I come back to the question. We loved the culture of SAP, and the idea was we create a company which has a similar culture. And the idea was then we say we are a little bit like a little SAP, not in software, but in consulting and with another focus. But from a cultural point of view, we are establishing a company which is quite similar, like SAP. And the use of this name was quite useful, because whenever we called a prospect, a customer, we said, here is Microsoft, and usually the assistants understood there's Microsoft or there's something with SAP, and so we were put through.
But there has to be, of course, that level of differentiation, between you and SAP, where you're coming from. Otherwise, of course, that entrepreneurship would not have made any sense. Where was that where you say, like, and these are the things that I want to make difference? This is what sets us apart.
We wanted to make things different. I mean, we wanted to create a company with similar cultures, with similar values, but it's a company which is focusing on consulting and not on software development, and which is a company which is defining consulting as a core business, and we want to be excellent in this business. I mean, at SAP, maybe somebody will hurt me from SAP, but it was not their core business. There was nobody who thought about how can we get better in consulting, because SAP was relying on, was growing fast at that point in time. There was the change from R2 to R3, and then SAP was evolving its business around the globe. So they relied very much on partner companies. So they didn't develop this business on their own. And so there was nobody who really thought about how can we make things better, how can we, all the things I mentioned before. And the other thing was, maybe I myself always was saying I'm a business process consulting. Also the focus on business processes was at SAP not so strong. And I can understand this, because first of all, SAP had to deliver information, knowledge about their products. Maybe not so much about how to use these products best to to design great business processes.
What did you need back then to start? Of course, a consulting business, it does not need a factory, big machinery, and so on. So probably the first invest was not that considerably high, probably. But of course, you needed your own thoughts that you, of course, use for your selling activities to win customers for a new company. Where did you make the first points in, hey, that's what we are? Was it the approach? Was it the methodology in that way?
We acquired as consultants. I mean, we started with 2 persons, and we didn't have an investor in the background, so we didn't immediately hire people. We started as 2 persons, and we started as consultants. And for sure, the very first activities were not global projects. That were activities as consultant. And my very first activity as consultant was that I supported the CIO of Heidelberger Druckmaschinen in making an analysis of his global project approach and give advice how maybe to change it. And how did we get these customers? It was by networking. For sure, we had a huge network, and the other thing is there was a great demand for consulting services. That was the time when the change was from R2 to R3. A lot of consultants out there didn't have R3 knowledge. We had R3 knowledge, so we could also talk about R3 and R3 projects. And this network and this knowledge we used to acquire the first projects.
Which is again interesting, because now that we have a similar situation with going from R3 ECC to S4HANA to cloud implementations, the same questions are asked again. Yeah, how is the right approach to do things? And when you set yourself apart back then by saying like, listen, we know what is in that new solution, and we know how to approach it, how to leverage the values best, and so on, then you followed back then already an approach which is seen like now 30 years later still as the top of the class approach for consulting companies.
This is what I was saying. I think the general problems haven't changed. The general challenges are more or less the same. For sure, there are today much more challenges than in the past. For example, when we talk about cybersecurity or something like that was not a problem at that point in time. There was no internet, and there was no access to the systems from outside and things like that. But when we talk about, in general, about business processes, about implementation of applications, about global projects, the general problems, the general challenges, I think, I'm a little bit out now of the business, are the same. It hasn't changed. But the other challenge was not only to acquire customers. Maybe that was not the big challenge. The big challenge was more to acquire and to find people working for CBS. I mean, we didn't have a name. We were small, and we didn't have an investor and background. And the thing was, our idea from the very beginning was that we are creating something special. And we were looking really for high-class people. We wanted to deliver excellent services, and we want to deliver excellent consulting services, and this is why we were looking for high-class people. And it was not that easy to acquire at that time, to hire high-class people. But the first 10 or the first 20 people we hired were people which we knew. So it was out of the network, and we could convince them that we have a vision, that we have a clear vision, and that we one point in time we are going to replace the big consulting companies. That was our goal, because I think you will go to ask me, when did you see that CBS is getting big? We from the very I mean, maybe we were crazy, maybe, yes. But our idea was not to set up a 50-man company. Our idea was we set up a company which can really help global corporations on a global scale around the globe. And we want to be better than all the big ones out there. And not only better, because to be better was not the challenge. The challenge was then to get big, but at the end of the day, you need a lot of resources with different knowledge and things like that. And therefore, it was clear that we had to had to build and to create a large company.
Rainer, it was not so long from that moment till you came into the game. How was it for you? As I think CBS was one of your first employers back then.
Yeah.
So you were one of these young people who could also have gone to Anderson Consulting and so on. How these companies back then had names, but you decided to go to that small, very highly motivated CBS. What was your opinion back then about the whole situation?
Yeah, I started in March 1998, and back then, so it was basically a good 3 years in the market, CBS. So for me, it was really important to see someone really visionary. You know, that was important for me and Harald. Having the interviews with Harald and really learning and sensing basically that he is basically pursuing something bigger. But still, it's kind of a small entity still where you can see also your footprint basically, and how could you help, growing the company and see how your activities are basically helping the company to grow and to scale. So that was really important for me, that you see basically your own footprint. So I have back then, I was also kind of doing interviews also with the bigger companies, but that was so different, let's say. So it was a conscious decision to really start in a smaller company with big ambitions instead of in a big company already being just a small number. So that was a clear. And maybe that's also back to my origin, let's say, how I grew up, because my parents, they were running a company on their own. So I was really always kind of already helping, during school time, even and during university, I was helping there, doing small projects and things like that, and doing actually work and also bringing in ideas. So that was really important for me that I'm able to bring in ideas.
So since you did not really come out of let's call it a 9-to-5 family background, it was never a question for you to go into that more corporate career path, but find fellow-minded entrepreneurs like Harald and then go for it.
Right, that asset. I mean, finding or kind of seeing the footprint that you leave, that was really important for me, not just being one number who's being said what to do somewhere. So that was super important for me, and that was kind of in such an environment. And back then, I mean, I studied business administration combined with information technology, and at that time it was basically the boom time for R3 in that sense. So if you want to scale that knowledge that I did, like in small things with at my parents' place there, at my parents' company, that was, of course, then you needed to go into the SAP universe, let's say, and that was a perfect combination, because on our side we always want to find people who have kind of understand the business side of things, but also the technology side of things, and basically bridge the things and bring it basically into and create impact with the combination of the two skills. And that was kind of what maybe was then back then a bit newer thing. Now it's basically maybe common sense, but back then it was a bit newer, I would say. And that was, of course, then I wanted to really move into this SAP because then you could do the things to combine that process side with the technology side, on a big scale, basically.
Harald, when we look today how SAP partners or SAP consultancies are working also together with SAP, you find a huge partner organization by SAP, which supports partners and provides information and certifications and so on. So we have, let's say, this kind of sub-industry now existing. Back then, I guess it was quite different. Yeah, that there was not this kind of, let's say, partner organizational status and so on. You got fed with information, but you were more or less on your own, yeah, as consultants. Um, how did that help you to get your own spin and opinion on how things should run when approaching implementation, when approaching digital transformation, in contrast by giving, like it is now, a certain path pre-configured or pre-told, yeah, by the, yeah, OEM of the solution?
Yes, not easy to answer. I mean, I think there are the two types of information you somehow could get from SAP. One type of information was just to get information about the development plans from SAP, the plans, and the other thing is to get information about the products. Um, at the very beginning, there was not a huge partner organization at SAP. And by the way, I must say that the first 25 years, CBS did not use the partner organization of SAP. So we had a personal network to SAP. So we had quite good access to the development centers, to the development managers. So a lot of the partnership, the work together with SAP was established really by a personal network. I know a lot of people there. And other people from CBS know the people. We are close to SAP. I mean, you can look out of the window and we see it more or less. SAP and all the people, our neighbors, are working for SAP, so we had a good network. The other point is information about possibilities, how to approach and how to manage SAP projects. I must say, we never relied on things that were created by SAP. We always thought we know it better. And we established our own methodology. I mean, we had a look at ASAP and all the things coming from SAP. And we used the things which were good. But the first thing is we were using our own methodologies. We developed our own methodology. And why we did that? I think we did that because, first of all, we were more focusing on the creation, on the design of business processes from the very beginning. I think we focused on first the business process and then the implementation steps, whereby we were always doing this simultaneously. This is very, very important because the waterfall model doesn't work. And yeah, as I said, I mean, it was not necessary to get this information from SAP.
From the things and the expectations you had in the beginning about this new life, this new career, and so on. Obviously, a lot of came true and a lot of turned out to be correct. So what you thought that way may look like, obviously a lot actually worked out. Were there things where you had to readjust your expectations, or when you thought like, oh, I expected now this kind would have been easier, now I have also to manage more these and those things, and I have now to work with the public institutions because now I'm a company which spends much more time, or the sales part was larger than expected? Were there things where you say like, okay, now after having gone through, this was a little bit different than I expected?
No, I cannot really say that there were things I expected from a point of view that they move into another way. I couldn't say so. No, I could not say so. There were no big surprises, I think. No, not really.
Okay.
We could have done things better if I look back.
Obviously, yes.
We could have done the one or the other thing differently. For example, I mean, you were talking about the build-up of the internal structures. I mean, we are a consultancy which is driven by consultants, so we are not driven by management, full-time management. We are driven by consultants, which are also managers, and so we were not focusing on the internal administration and on internal processes. If I go back, if I could go back, maybe I would change. I would not change the structure. We are a consulting company. It must be driven by consultants. The management must be out of the consulting area. But maybe we should have built up the internal structures a little bit faster, finance, HR, and things like that. We were not very strong in that, and I think I left some challenges open when I gave over to Rainer. Yeah, but it was not a real big issue. It's one of the points which we could have done better.
This is a question to both of you because, of course, it affects you both. As an SAP implementation partner or working in that SAP universe, SAP, of course, itself does not remain the same every year like it is. It changes every year. It has new strategies. Sometimes it has a thing where it realizes after that maybe it did not work out as well, like the experience management topics and so on. So as a partner, you are always a little bit hard-pressed to, do I follow now this new strategy or this new idea, or do I stick on my road and do not go this new path? Yeah, when SAP, for example, builds up a new business or let's say a new component, a new piece of software. What was and what is your policy and your mindset to these new topics? Are you at first skeptical? Are you at first open? Do you think it's better to follow everything that the big OEM goes through? Probably not. How do you match these kinds of ideas there?
I mean, we are always open for innovation. So we are really kind of an innovation-driven company and looking forward, how can we improve things? How can we use new methodologies, new procedures, but also, of course, new technology in order to improve, the project approach, the project execution, but of course, especially then the processes that and the setup that companies run. So how can we be we want to be a strategic advisor for our clients. So in order to really make them more effective, more efficient, more agile, and also more sustainable. And in that sense, it's not we are not chasing the short-term idea, but more, what is there an overall, let's say, target picture, that we are pursuing and really trying to derive for the client. And it's, our clients, they have different challenges, they have different setups, they have different legacies. So you always need to find kind of the right approach for them. And of course, we want to kind of find a solution for them and create a solution for them that is sustainable for them. So in that sense, we need to bake in, of course, all the innovation. We want to bake them in, but also not kind of trapping into kind of short-term things that are not that will not prevail, basically. So it's always kind of a bit balancing the innovation and how can we basically cook it into an overall story there. So that.
And of course, what adds to that now, since all those companies are publicly owned, they have always two different sets of customers: the real customer and, of course, the analysts. And they are the kind of products which are more done for the analysts, and there are products which are more or less done for the customers. So, what kind of hints or what kind of recommendations would you give somebody to find out which is which?
Yeah, it took a while from our side to play the analyst story basically separately from our perspective. Of course, it's important for us basically to show also the size and the relevance from our perspective. That's basically looking into the analyst piece. So it took probably almost 30 years, I would say, that we see the analyst as also kind of a separate target group, I would say, from our side now. But from a client perspective, of course, I mean, it's always hard to tell because the overall idea is, of course, that analysts have is, of course, really something that from a strategic perspective makes sense a lot of time. But the question is, how fast is this really digestible and doable in a sense? And this is something where we're trying to bridge it into reality, let's say. And there, sometimes, the companies struggle with more basic questions, I would say, with more basic challenges. So in order kind of harmonize processes, this was a long time basically a challenge, for a lot of clients. They started implementations in the early days basically country-wise, let's say, and everybody was happy when this one country was live, when you could ship things and you could invoice things, and then also the finance model was basically local, and then that changed, of course, over time. And then how can you have an overall steering model, for example, for the whole group? And this is something where sometimes, maybe even now, or still even now, we see that companies still struggle with that one. And of course, there is a quite gap to the, let's say, the big strategic things that are out there. But so it's not an either or from our perspective, but we need to deliver basically both things, basically a solid fundament, but or a solid foundation, if you will, but also an innovative approach that basically enables new business models, for example.
Harald, has this also always been the same? How customers react to new technologies? Like in the past, when I talk with CIOs, for example, who have been for a long time in the business, many of them say, okay, back then you did not really have so much technology within your business. Everything what you did was basically start from zero, because now we have this capability that we did not have before. So this kind of, let's say, we have to upgrade something which already exists, or let's say we have to migrate from something that already exists to another thing, was not so much of a part back then, because it was more or less always a start from a green field in a certain way in many areas. Do you see that the customer interaction that consulting companies like we have with customers have changed by that in the past decades? Or do you think like, okay, the tone may be different and the starting point may be different, but the discussions are always the same?
I would say in general, it hasn't changed. In detail, there might be a lot of changes. I mean, what has really changed, I think, during time is that I would say 15 years ago, we were talking about innovations, about the past, which was communicated by SAP. I think 15 years ago, everybody was relying on SAP and was following SAP. And therefore, when SAP had innovations or said they are going to have innovations, customers were waiting for SAP, and they were then using the products. Yes, and I think that has changed because now a lot of these analyst innovations they are tested, and customers are asking, do they really go that way, and will they deliver, and things like that. So that has really changed.
When we have now this kind of, let's say, missing buffer between the development, right, go-to-market and the customer implementation, how do you think the role of a company like CBS, of consultants, have changed by that from back to now? What do have now consultants consider, which probably back then was not necessary yet?
Well, I'm out of business now since 3 years, but I think one thing has changed. I mean, the world is getting more complex. The world of SAP, the product world is getting more complex. The customers have very new challenges. Things are changing faster. I think the consultants, not the consultants, the customers now need more consultancy support. They have to rely more on consultants, and therefore the trusted advisor is more important than ever.
I would also say, like 15 years ago, if we look at client conversations that we had back then, it was mostly, let's say, on an IT level. Nowadays, basically all even in early phases of projects, or like in RFP phases or something like that, it's almost clear that you will talk to the board of the client, because they are digitization, of course, now also the whole AI topic, basically that keeps them busy, not only the IT department, but of course all the business departments. So I mean, all the the mega trends are basically on our side in a sense, that it's necessary. It's not just, you cannot run a business, without information technology, without digitized processes. So it's way more. Everybody talks about the business transformation, but that's basically the lever or the driver for it, if you will. That it's a big leverage effect, of course, and a big potential for each business department. That's why also on the board level, the discussions, or it's clear that such a complex world needs basically guidance in a sense.
So when we look now and be very, very frank about events like in the SAP user groups, how the topics which are taught there. And when we set together, on the one hand, the customer experience, like what they really implemented, what they really work with. And what then, when you look at, for example, the technology side, what's theoretically possible, what's developed, and so on, you see a gap opening up. Yeah, like development and technology goes in that direction, and it's getting harder and harder, of course, for an adopter and a user to catch up, to cope with that, and so on. Also, of course, like you said, because we have sometimes the kind of irritation, like, okay, what's now really that new thing I should jump on and what's maybe not? Since now the conversations are not IT focused anymore, do consultants today have to have completely different or maybe additional competencies like maybe 15, 30 years ago?
Yeah. Ideally, maybe not. We always looked for people, who can combine the business, business language with the information technology, but also being great facilitators, facilitate workshops and really bridge, the gap between business and IT departments and really guide the project, navigate the project, all that. But back then it was maybe a kind of an additional value that you could bring into a project. Nowadays, I think it's absolutely necessary, that because the projects are getting bigger and bigger, more and more complex, not only technology-wise, but also, now it's almost always a global initiative with basically a global coverage. So this is something, of course, that adds complexity. So all kind of the aspects of business, the transformation in the sense of the change, in the sense of really finding the right value, in that project, in that specific situation for the client. That's something, that I truly believe is necessary, and I truly believe that that we need additional skills, and all the consultants need additional skills, and that's why we also came up with kind of a slogan that basically everybody needs to develop, into the three dimensions, from a methodology point of view, from a business language point of view, but also from a technology point of view. And ideally, each and every individual, will bring that in basically. So absolutely convinced. Hard to achieve though, because at this kind of magnitude and also the speed that things are changing, it's for sure quite a challenge, yes.
Concerning the capabilities and competencies of consultants, you were back then one of the first one, and you did that already at a very early stage of bringing in and educating young consultants like trainees and so on. And when you look today at many senior managers of SAPs, of CBS, a lot of them had made back then their first step in the academy, how we can call it. How did you make that decision back then to invest in that? Because it was not so common back then for a mid-sized company, which was CBS was, to really invest in education. Others, they recruited, let others do that job, but you said, no, we want to do it ourselves.
Yeah. We started our first trainee program, I think, in 1998 or 1999. We were, at that point in time, 30 consultants, and we hired 15 trainees.
Which is, sorry, but a huge number.
Yeah, it was a huge number, right? Why did we do that? Quite easy. When I started at SAP, I started in a trainee program at SAP, and so I went through a program of 6 months and I learned a lot of things. application knowledge, technology knowledge, methodology, and things like that. And I built a network. And I'm using this network. I'm still in touch with most of the people out of this trainee program today. And so it was by experience. I had good experience with such kind of trainee program. I was convinced about the concept. And this is why we set up this trainee program. And I think it was a good idea.
For sure, it was a great idea. Yes.
Was culture also an element that motivated you to do that besides competence?
Yeah, sure. It's about a culture. Well, first of all, it's a network thing. I mean, CBS was, and then I think still is, a network organization. So everybody should more or less know each other and should know somebody whom I can ask questions. And at that point in time, in 1999, we started to set up the first subsidiaries. But the trainees had to come to Heidelberg. And after that, they went out to the subsidiaries. But so they had a network. So everybody from them knew somebody in other subsidiaries. Everybody from them knew experts in different application areas and things like that. So we built up a network in the SAP, in the CBS organization. So it was a cultural thing. And another point was maybe it's a general idea of how developing CBS was. We wanted to rely on our own consultants. We wanted to train them on our own because we saw that outside the mindset of the consultants and the experience of the consultant was not exactly the one we were looking for. So, and if you can't buy it, you have to make it on your own.
Yourself. Exactly.
Like a lot of other world market leaders are doing. I mean, our culture is a little bit, on a very general level, is a culture of so many world market leaders here in the area.
When we're talking about the world and about the subsidiaries you mentioned, also again you have two extreme strategies possible, like concentrating on a certain market, like for example Germany or DACH or whatever. Others go very, very early, build up subsidiaries and so on, may have issues building up critical mass in certain markets. What was your strategy back then?
Concerning subsidiaries?
Yes.
Well, let's say we had two different types of subsidiaries. First of all, we had subsidiaries in Germany. And we didn't build up subsidiaries because of the customers, because, I mean, we're from a very early stage supporting our customers on a global level. So the location didn't play an important role. We set up subsidiaries out of two reasons. The first reason was we had offices in an area and we could use this area as a recruiting area. I mean, consultants at that point in time usually were out with the customer, but sometimes they are in the office and then they have to meet and to get together, build networks and talk with the experienced consultants and exchange experience. So therefore you need a location where somebody can go, and because it was difficult and it's still difficult to hire people, we set up subsidiaries. The other point was, if you set up a subsidiary, you're creating more or less a new tree. So you need a manager who is managing this subsidiary, and by this you can be somehow more or less independent, and you can set up more or less a new company in a specific area. That was the second thought about subsidiaries. And then third, I mean, subsidiaries outside of Germany is clear that's a different point than you are entering a new market. And we were setting up subsidiaries not only for entering new markets, we were setting up subsidiaries because we had to build a global delivery organization.
Since your customers, they are not just limited on one market, you have to go where the customer is.
Sure.
Rainer, when you did your career start at CBS, and you saw this kind of growth and these decisions from the perspective of a young consultant, how did it influence your personal path?
Well, it was always, everything is possible, if you will. That was the mindset. And of course, the other one was seize the opportunity. Not everything was, kind of plan driven, that we knew exactly what we wanted to do. There is always also kind of opportunities that you need to seize then at the given point, and then, then act fast, let's say, and with a lot of emphasis on this thing to make it happen and to grow. And this was something, that was especially the spirit that I was looking for. To be able to see an opportunity and talk about it, and then, kind of make it happen.
Did you have at one time the motivation to go abroad, build up a new consulting organization there for CBS?
Yeah, actually, in the early days, it was almost already after 2 years. We made a kind of a bit of an adventure, and we were trying to build something up in New York back then. So we were kind of always also project driven. We were there. I was traveling between kind of Germany and the US for a client a lot, building there a global template for a big consumer industry client, together also with SAP and there was a small team doing kind of great things. And there, as I said, I happened to be a lot in the US with another colleague of mine, so we investigated really setting up something. But back then it was a bit, let's say it didn't turn out completely as we thought, also partnering with someone there, so we then stopped that again. And then there were so many things that we needed to kind of manage and drive here. So actually I never worked, let's say, abroad for a longer time, in a sense, but of course, project-wise, I was kind of very much also internationally involved.
So, is there a right and a wrong moment for this kind of expansion, or is it just when the customers are there and it's feasible, that's the moment to do that?
I think, as Rainer said, a lot of things were driven just also by opportunity. We have had a clear strategy, a clear vision from the very beginning, but nevertheless, somehow you have to make it happen, and you have to be somehow also opportunistic, and sometimes there were just possibilities driven by customers. So we were following our customers with project-wise in different countries, and when we have worked in these countries, maybe it was a good time to set up a subsidiary in this country. So we never did big investments in setting up subsidiaries. We did it step by step. Nowadays, when I look back, you could ask, shouldn't we have done it differently? Should we just
acquire the company, for example?
Okay. We started to acquire companies, but that was somewhere later. We could have done that. We could have grown faster, maybe. I'm not sure, because not every acquisition is a gain. And CBS has really big disadvantages. The disadvantage is that we have a clear vision and that we have a very, very specific culture. And this culture also creates limits. Not everybody, we cannot work together with everybody. So acquiring companies could be difficult, could create difficulties.
When you look into the market, you see now several, let's say, companies that started to exist in the last 10 years, which started out as smaller companies coming together and building this kind of conglomerate under a certain umbrella. Most of them are also investor-backed and so on. Of course, it has advantages and disadvantages. I guess that was never an alternative for you, to say like we become either part of a conglomerate like this, or build our own one. But we want to grow not 100%, but 95% organically.
No, it was not. It was never an option. It was never an option. We got part of the Matana Group. CBS is part of the Matana Group, but in this group, CBS is a company which is managed on the CBS level, and so it was always possible to develop the strategy and also to follow our strategy and vision. And I can say, I think in general, the nucleus of our DNA, our strategy, our vision has never changed, and I think so. I don't know, Rainer. We are still following this nucleus, this idea.
Well, the general idea is there, forever, and of course it changes with the technology and the environment that is there. But the general idea for sure is, as Harald said, and we never wanted to compromise, on the quality aspect and the ambition that we have with regards to quality, but also with the regards, navigating between business and technology always, doing a project in a very structured way. And really creating impact for the clients, not just following a saying that is out there, but really showing what the impact is and the value is, and then creating that impact. Basically, that was always the idea. And then, of course, there are different circumstances under which this flies, let's say. But and of course, strategy execution is different in a sense. But the general idea, the vision, and the general strategy that is set and is for sure our DNA. And that is why, as Harald said, it's sometimes maybe a limit, because we have certain ideas how we run the business, and if someone wants to come in and it doesn't work this way, then the collaboration wouldn't work. And that's why, of course, you could see it positive or negative, but most of our growth, as you said, was organic, and it was just the last 3 years when we did some small acquisitions, basically to round up, I would say, our portfolio in a sense. It was not kind of to gain a complete new market, but to round up our capabilities in a sense.
And growth for itself is not was. I mean, I have to talk about the past. Growth was for itself not the objective, not growth. It was the idea, and all the things we did was to follow the idea. All the things we did is we have to do this because we want to support great customers, large corporations on a global level with a certain level of quality and with a certain methodology. And we have an idea about the culture of CBS, and we have an idea about the values. And I think that vision was not too bad, because at the end, I mean, who was, when you look back the last 25 years, who was more successful in this market than CBS?
Yeah, not compromising on quality
also in
and
figures,
value.
because nevertheless, CBS was always highly profitable, and we were growing fast.
And you mentioned becoming part of the Materna Group in that way. It was like 10 years.
15 years.
Or 15 years after the start.
10 years after the start.
10 years after the
Right.
start.
Yeah.
Why this decision back then?
Well, I'm not the only founder. Tarek Ram and I founded the company, and after 10 years, we saw that we have different views on the future strategy. And then the question was, what can we do? And one possibility was to bring in an investor in the company, and by this, I mean, it was possible then to let's say, to follow different strategies. And I stayed with the company, and Tarek then left the company. And this is how we got part of Materna. And from my point of view, it was an important decision, and it was a very good decision, because I'm still happy about the decision we made at that point in time, because I could closely work together with Winfried Materna, and he was somebody who was just looking at the high-level strategy. He was looking at that. I made the proposals together with the management of CBS, and we could follow our strategy and could go on.
What was the playing rules for you when you went into that partnership with Materna? Because
could you repeat?
Sorry, your playing rules that you set up for yourself. Because of course it could mean,
yes,
you do not know it in the beginning, of course, losing part of that independence, losing part of that identity, maybe having to change a little bit the things that you said that which was our values, which of course nobody wants to lose. How did you navigate that process?
Yeah, navigate that process. First of all, I mean, we didn't have to change more or less anything. So the only thing we had to change for sure, we had to invest a little bit more in financial stuff and in reporting, because now you're reporting to a third organization. Before that, I knew more or less everything. So reporting was not that much of an issue. So we had a reporting system, and for sure we had somebody. We had to talk several times a year about our business and about our plans and about our ideas. But that was positive, because I had somebody who was very experienced. Winfried Matana was very experienced. So for me, he was more or less
sparring partner.
Yeah, more than that. I mean, he was my boss, but he was let's say a sparring partner. He was an advisor, and that was good for me. That was good for the company, and we had somebody who was begging us. I mean, sometimes things could happen. Nothing happened, and we grew and we were profitable. But you had somebody in the back, or for example, at that point in time, we didn't have a broad management team. If I fell on the ground or whatever, there was an organization who could back everything. On the other side, if you look at the possibilities I had as a manager, after that we made that change. I had another, Gesellschafter.
Shareholder or?
Shareholder, right. We had another shareholder in, but this shareholder was really just supporting us on a high level and was controlling us on a very high level. I was completely free, and I could do what I wanted to do.
Which is very much worth.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Otherwise, maybe then I would have left after 2 years. It's quite unusual that somebody who is selling his company stays another 15 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you see that, for example, in especially companies like SAP and so on, which acquires a lot. You see the founders, they remain in some management positions for 1 and 2 years, and then they're out. They leave for other challenges there. When we see that story, of course, also as plateaus, which every growth story is more or less. What was for you the next step after coming together with Materna? Was it the global expansion that way?
In general, I would say with Materna in the background, the idea was to expand faster. You can take more risk if you're part of a bigger group or bigger association, and that was also the time when we really made the first plans to grow faster and to expand internationally. That's true. Yeah, we didn't do that before. We had some small tries, but then we had really strategic activities. We had strategic goals concerning the internationalization of CBS. Yeah. And we went faster. We went faster and with more or less higher risk.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Rainer, something like the strong position that CBS now has in the area of SLT, in, for example, enterprise transformation, we have an own software suite which manages these kinds of undertakings very beautiful, which of course needs investments. We have, I think, 1 million lines of code in there, which are not written by themselves. That costs money. That means people have to get paid for. Do you think that would have been possible without that step?
I'm not sure if it's really completely linked to that step, because it's always when we said that it's always a combination of business processes and information technology. We always, from basically day one, also emphasized the relevance of data. And that was always super important. So from the early days, you mentioned the R2 to R3 wave that was out there then. So it was we were kind of very closely working together with a specialized SAP department that was running the R2 to R3. There were specialized tools on migrating R2 to R3 back then. So we were using them a lot together with the SAP colleagues on our projects, and already kind of doing basically crazy things back then. So we did like from R2 to R3 the biggest migration of bill of materials that was ever done, basically things like that. So, and that with this special procedures and technologies that you need. So we were always very close to this one. And then so once, the R3 was becoming more and more popular and more kind of penetrated the market, it was also that we had R3 to R3 moves, basically. So companies were buying other companies and wanted to move data from R3 to R3, from one R3 to another R3. So that was something where we leveraged basically the knowledge and also helped our clients doing a lot on the data side. And this is how over time, basically, things kind of developed. And then basically almost at that point in time, we were kind of putting the things together and starting really to doing heavy loaded R3 to R3 migrations. But it was also that we had a bit the boldness then even more, but that came from an early area, let's say content-wise. But coincidentally, it was, and I was actually running one of the projects in 2006 to 2007 when we basically, I think it was actually the first time when we merged really two SAP system, almost merging the full history with all data, because it was kind of a plant business plant construction business that needed, of course, a lot of data, what kind of material went into that plant, and what kind of equipment and everything, and you wanted to see the full history for service purposes and everything. So that was kind of the starting point into that area, let's say, where we did a lot on standardization, harmonization, and consolidation of SAP systems and processes.
And it became quite early clear that this was not to be done with the available tools by others, for example, by SAP and so on. There was this own enterprise transformer necessary.
Yeah, we thought, we need another approach where we can. We talked about minimally invasive approaches, because back then, for example, it was a lot of also finance-driven opportunities out there. I mentioned that earlier, that in the early days, SAP or R3 was implemented very locally. And back then, every company and every legal entity had their own, for example, chart of accounts, their own cost center structure, own controlling area thing, and then it became almost impossible to get transparency and to compare apples to apples, basically, because kind of the whole cost estimation schemes were different and all these things. So that was something where we had, and if you run an SAP system and the logistical processes are already up and running, how would you do that? So everybody said, well, you need to start greenfield, and basically still under R3, back then. And we said, well, we have another approach where we can basically, when the logistics processes are not even touched, but you can change basically the financial setup, which is not possible with, let's say, standard means. And this was something, where a lot of standardization, and we created a lot of business transparencies and steering capabilities basically for clients. And that was, as of 2010, that was basically one of our biggest, let's say, project approaches that we were doing. So combining the business side of finance with the technical possibilities to change basically a running SAP system, if you will. Start, if you want to do that, change a chart of account with a running SAP system, it's impossible. So you need a certain tool set and approach for that. And this was kind of a special thing.
And we see, like now, 15 years later, how important that step is, because how many adopters of S4HANA who went from ECC to S4HANA via the classic migration brownfield, who just did shift data from left to right without doing any selective optimization. Now, 5 years, 7 years after their go live, are still working with the classic GUIs in their legacy processes, basically have not become better than before. Yeah. Do you think that this kind of, let's say, own spin on a very relevant topic, the migration that CBS has committed themselves to, is something that will carry us onward for the next 10, 50 years? Or do you think like, okay, there may be something like move to the cloud where we have to add up capabilities on that general accepted SLT philosophy?
For sure, we need to evolve, and always kind of invent ourselves again. But the general idea, I mean, we are talking about fast value. So it's the two words, it's fast and it's value. So because we truly believe that never-ending projects, they are a pain for everybody. I mean, for the clients, but also for, the people working for the client, but also for our consultants. So it's something, if we truly believe that you need to deliver something in a certain time period. And this is where our tools helped doing that now during the move to S4. But you are right. I mean, kind of the story continues. And of course, there are new possibilities out there. Public cloud becomes more and more popular, let's say, and also more and more powerful over time. So we also need to find a way how we can bring in that idea of a fast value. And the fast value is not only the implementation side of things, but it's also how do you move a company, whatever, imagine there are 50 entities worldwide, and if you want to move them over one weekend in a kind of a combined approach, how much of a ramp down and a ramp up business-wise can you afford in order to make that happen? So this is not just as at the implementation and technology side, but also the business impact side of things. And this is what we want to now be very ambitious with our clients, and of course we need to then think how we can do that with a new setup, for example, in the public cloud, and also see how we can industrialize also that move if we become a more and more public cloud oriented.
Well, this kind of move to we need also our own tool is not exclusive CBS. There are other companies too who have their own tools and softwares for doing data migration and so on. And for some of them, the way led to them to retract out of the consulting business and concentrate on being now just a software provider who delivers maybe consultants to manage the software, but not really doing end-to-end projects anymore. CBS has decided against that. Yeah, we are doing the opposite. Why? What is your belief? Why you say like I'm consequent in this? We are standing for end-to-end value and not retracting out of consulting into maybe a little bit more margin-friendly software-only business.
First of all, I think the general question is quite easy. We are consultants. We are not a technology or software company. We are consultants. So we will stay, hopefully CBS will stay forever a consulting company. This is our business. I can go back a little bit to the past. I mean, when we started with CBS in 1995, first of all, we wanted to be business process consultants using SAP applications to make things happen. And we wanted to focus on business processes. But then we saw that if we are focusing on business processes and other companies are providing the customer with services of data migration, and other consulting companies are providing the customer with integration with services, with developing of interfaces, and they do not deliver in time and in a good quality, the whole project will fail. So this is why we made the decision, we move also into this technical part. So that was the first step why we moved into data migration, and that was also the reason why we moved into development of add-ons, and we moved into the development of interfaces and using all the nice interface technologies of SAP. So it was clear for us we have to deliver full service. We have to be fully responsible for the whole process, for the whole project, and then the customer can sleep well and he will somewhen and very fast be successful.
So the formula continues to consists of technology and the consulting part.
For sure, that will stay, because and now we can proudly say, you know, that we are basically the only company in the world that can deliver this whole approach basically out of one hand. For sure, SAP has also the capability of doing it, but it's not kind of a dedicated service company. Of course, they have the competence and also the tools and everything to do that. However, you know, from a service company point of kind of footprint or company point of view, it's we can proudly say that we are the only ones really delivering from a kind of an early adoption strategy. How are we actually approaching the project into the business side of things, application consulting, the business process side, then the technical implementation on every platform. It could be on a private cloud, a public cloud, even on premise still, of course. And then really also with the special move, with this selective approach that really enables other approaches, other project horizons as well. So this is something where we really have a unique selling proposition there.
More and more consulting companies do not really see themselves as implementation partners anymore. They do not really use the word anymore. They are talking about transformation. That word is something which started to exist within the CBS universe quite early. Was there something like an initial point where you, for yourself, for the identity of CBS, decided to see yourself as the transformation company? Or did this come naturally?
Well, I mean, probably we always there. I mean, to interpret the language, it's always important to see, you know, in which time this word came up, basically. And I think the word transformation was always heavy loaded, but basically with different perspectives and different with different interpretation in a sense. I mean, sometimes it started a kind of as a some interpret it as a technical move, the other interpret it as a holistic business. Business process changes, even to business model changes. And then I think nowadays it's really kind of this complex and overarching aspect of changing the company, even, you know, kind of from the learning side with employees and everything. So it's a very heavy loaded kind of word at the moment. As said, it was a bit less over time. It started to be a more from a technical perspective, or were more like, let's say, different perspectives and isolated perspectives on the word. And nowadays it basically merged into the overall idea that we really bring all the puzzle pieces together, let's say. So it's but it's not only the word transformation, you know, where we stand for. We always try to explain things in normal words, if you will. Mm-hmm. And this is that we don't just use one word, you know, when people want to interpret it, but really explain what we are doing with understandable words on each level. And I mentioned, you know, that it was rare that, you know, the board members were part of the discussion, and then it was truly clear that you really need to talk different language, you know, when they come onto the game. So and this is important to bridge it basically into normal language.
When you look back into the last 20 years of CBS history, of course, we talk always to our customers, you need new capabilities to ship through the crises that are coming up. And CBS has experienced their own crisis. If you look back into the financial crisis, Corona, and so on. What were your learnings out of that as a company leaders that consulting companies should be able to do to ship these kinds of crises more easily than maybe others?
That's a hard question. If we can do it differently than others, I mean, nowadays it's the same. You know, my slogan for this year is a bit, you know, expect the unexpected, because you never know what happens and you need to prepare. And one thing is probably to be completely open and honest with your colleagues and basically with everybody to explain, of course, not to threaten or something, but to really explain the background, but also to say why we are well, you know, kind of prepared for things that might occur, but also to be open, as said, and explain the background of things and also the challenges that are out there and what we need to do to overcome them, and explain in a very good and understandable way, as I said, the challenges and the way how we want to tackle them. I think that's probably one of the most important ingredients, I would say, because you can never foresee everything that happens, and all the leaders, we explained that they knew everything. I don't believe that because it's like there is surprises always out there. So I think that's from my perspective, the most important things, that you really explain the backgrounds and how we tackle the things, and if it's and explain your measures basically, and I think then people can understand why you are doing that and why the company reacts as it reacts, and if this somehow is explainable and is for them kind of making sense, then I think you're in a good position. That people will still follow and will really want to still work together with us basically.
Harald, now coming to the point where the succession happens, how do you let go of a company you build? How do you let go of a company you build? Parents, for example, when kids move out, they're getting emotional. Is it being in a position that you decide, okay, my time there is now, I want to focus on different things, more personal interest, I want to let go of the company. How does this decision happen? How do you manage to cope with that decision? Because I think there are lots of things going around in your head. And how did you proceed with that decision?
I think in principle it's quite easy. I mean, you're getting older. You have to be clear about that, and then you can't be CEO for forever. I mean, so I always thought I will be CEO until I'm 60. Now I left CBS with 58. That was around 60, so that was clear to me with 50. At 60, I will leave and will do other things because of my own life, and also I think it's good to leave a company and to give it into other hands at the right time. And a consulting company, a company like CBS, is a company which is driven by a lot of young people and by innovation and things like that. And I'm not quite sure that, elder people are not as innovative as young ones. If I remember back the SAP time, I always had problems as a consultant when I was 27 with people who were 35 and were complicated.
35 is already where the complication starts.
No, let's come back to the point. I mean, it was all well prepared, and I mean, before I left, 2 years before I left, I made the decision, and I also was talking with Winfried Matana, and that I was saying it's time to say goodbye. And there was also the Corona time. The Corona time was quite hard, and so I think it was a good time to leave. And it was for sure emotionally, it was very hard. It was a very hard time for me, these 2 years. But I worked until the last day, and one day of another, it changed, and it was no problem for me. And it was no problem because I knew that CBS is in good hands.
When you look back to your active time, what were the top 3 highlights that you especially enjoy remembering?
The top 3 highlights. That is hard. I mean, we had a hell lot of success, and we acquired great companies, and we had great success with projects, and we were innovative and things like that. On the other hand, there are no such highlights. I don't know. What was the highlight? One of the highlights was for sure the change to Matana in the life of CBS, and one highlight was for sure also the entry into this building, because that was really a really major step. And now you could also not only see and feel that CBS has changed and has entered a new level. But in general, I mean, our development was quite without disruption, and was quite sustainable, I think. It's a little bit boring.
Right.
And that was another reason why I left, because, I mean, we were growing all the time, and we were profitable. What to gain in the future?
True words. But then in this case, how do you look for a successor? How do you look for a successor? What are the what is a good and safe way to choose the right person for that?
To choose the right person for success?
No, as a successor, as your successor. How do you choose that person that you trust with the future of that company you build?
I think there was it was quite easy. I mean, I had never to think about it. It was always very clear who will who will be the successor of my position. That was not a great thing. It was very clear that Rainer will follow, and I also think the change was maybe I'm wrong, but I think the change was not too big because, I mean, the company was not led by me alone. We have a broad management team. I mean, there are other managing directors in place, Stefan Risse and Holger Scheel, and there are a lot of consulting directors and managers, and all these managers and all these consulting directors were in place for 10, 50, 20 years at CBS. So I think the change was not too big, and I was not managing this company on my own. I was not leading the company. Maybe I somehow was leading the strategy development process and made sure that there is enough coffee in the discussion.
Maybe you're underestimating a bit your visionary leadership, because, I mean, people were concerned, of course, when Harald was leaving, he was kind of the constant for CBS forever, basically.
Forever, yes.
And he was kind of the visionary leader and kind of the number one person basically and many people are a long time with us, of course, but Harald was there always, so it was of course something that it was for sure kind of a bit of a revolution for sure for the company, and also a bit of a shock for quite some people when it became public that Harald will leave. On the other hand, it somehow was also good for everybody to see that we have kind of a natural of evolution, so kind of it's ongoing, kind of an inside solution, if you will, and it's not someone coming from the outside and explaining us how we should run the business, because as Harald said, there is a broad executive team, there is a lot of a very kind of experienced management team on many levels. It's kind of an established network in that sense. So it was not that one position, that actually was not kind of. It was a stable environment, let's put it this way. However, of course, it was your entrepreneurship, Harald, and your vision, that was kind of the North Star for many people. So at the beginning, I felt a bit of a burden on my shoulders, I would say. Especially, I mean, these are kind of large footprints, that I want to step in. But in that sense, logically, it was not a problem. It was more, let's say, the overall, how would I say, the feeling around it, and how people digested it, and it was not kind of the brain thing. It was more like the gut feeling about it, which was made them skeptic for sure in the beginning.
And of course, by choosing an internal successor, this adds smoothness in the transition, absolutely. But did you have something of a process, like for half a year, where you more and more took over certain decisions and so on and moved out, or how did you manage that go live, which it is in a certain way?
Well, it was already, as said, we did a lot in the executive team. Harald and I, we were close already, like not just the last half of a year, I would say, but more like, I would say even 2 and 3 years back, Harald and I worked a lot on planning and also kind of more in outside representation, also with Materna, their discussions there. So I was not kind of completely new, I would say. Harald involved me in many things, that were going on. So it was really a smooth transition in a sense. However, as Harald said, he was active until the last day. So there was a lot. So we could also kind of strive or really be active and agile, and very energetic still to the last day. So Harald was still doing a lot of things, I was doing a lot of things, but still, the kind of the very important thing, and the kind of we were doing that together in a sense, and not just from a handover perspective, but more from really sparring perspective. So that was already, from that sense, it was not completely new or something. I didn't need to learn a lot. And on the other hand, also I'm a bit of a different person, so it was always also clear that there needs to be kind of a bit of a change there. I didn't want to imitate kind of Harald completely and try to play as I were Harald, but more I am who I am and hope that I'm doing things in a nice way so people can understand. And then that was kind of the move then. And luckily, it went out. It turned out well.
Definitely. Are there things that you say that you may maybe consciously or unconsciously different?
One conscious thing was, I think, the size of the company is one thing, and then of course the percentage-wise, growth, as Harald said, is almost boring then in a sense, because growth, the percentage, if you look at the percentage, it's okay, it's the same. But if you look at absolute number of people or euro, and especially if you look at absolute number of people who join, it's many people. So it was in the beginning when, especially, and Harald said it was Corona time, and it was really hard. So my emphasis was a lot on explaining things basically and communicating, and we had many people joining, and really make sure that the special spirit of CBS, that is really also new people can really sense it, feel it, and really kind of experience that. That was something really important. So I was doing a lot on communication and with different formats. So I was trying to put a lot of emphasis there in the beginning, because I truly believe, there is a multiplier effect. If you explain things very, very nicely, people can take that and, interpret it on their side and then multiply it out, basically. And this is something which is maybe a bit, because I'm a bit of a different person there, so maybe I explained it also a bit differently. So that's maybe a conscious process, where we thought, okay, we should enter a new stage, I would say.
Does a founder lead different than a CEO?
Does he think different? I think not every founder and every CEO, there are different founders outside there, and there are different CEOs outside. It depends on. Mm-hmm. I think usually there is a difference, but I think Rainer is more an entrepreneur.
More of an entrepreneur than a CEO.
Right.
Is it because
maybe because of his roots?
Yeah, absolutely. Was at one time, and I know that from a different company, they are in a similar topic, and they are strongly discuss about an external successor. Was this at any point something which could come into mind?
I never thought about it. I never thought about that, and I think Matana never thought about that, and it was very clear, and I think it was all well prepared. The development of our company, I think we always thought about the development of our company years ahead, and also that there will be a change, and that I'm someone leaving. That was clear, and it was also clear that I'm not going to leave with 65. So it was clear that when I'm around 60, there will be a change, and I think it was for everybody clear that first of all that will be somebody out of the organization, and I think there was no discussion at all. And nobody was surprised when we published that Rainer is following. That was clear. That was clear for years.
So how does your days now look like?
You want me to talk about my private life?
Now, what are the things that have changed for you now, not being, let's say, connected that close to the company you founded anymore? You have.
No, I went out to the company, and I'm out of the company, fully out of the company since the day one. I'm keeping a personal, private relationship, but I'm no longer connected to the company. So I'm completely out, and I'm more or less completely out of business activities. I'm a little bit supporting other startup companies at Advisor, and but I'm living now my private life, and now I'm focusing on other things, and I'm having now a lot more time for these private things.
Where do you see your former company in 10 years?
In 10 years?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years.
That's really hard to say, because if the world stays more or less like it is today, then I'm quite sure that CBS will go on growing and will be very successful, even when there are some challenges out in the market. Because I think when there will challenges arise, when there will come black swans around the corner, CBS is well prepared, and I'm quite sure that CBS is better prepared for changes, for challenges than other competitors. So in general, I'm quite optimistic concerning CBS. On the other hand, the world is changing very disruptively. You don't know what will be in 5 years. We don't know what will be in 10 years, not only from an economic perspective, but from a political perspective. So it's hard to say. I don't know.
Rainer, with the advent of AI, which is in everybody's mind and heads right now, and the media is full of that topic, how do you think this topic will change the SAP consulting business in the next years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it will have a major impact. However, exactly to name which one is not that easy. But from a general thing is about AI, probably short term it's a bit the effect and the impact is expected, but long term it's underestimated, the effect. So I think also long term, for us as a consulting company, it will change everyday's life of all our employees. Also, especially in the consulting side, there is such a big leverage in this technology, to fasten up projects, to spend more time on explaining things and really making sure that we get the value and not that we implement basically things. I mean, this has a huge leverage. However, also it needs big capabilities to manage all this complexity that is coming in and really leverage it to a right way. So for us, it was clear that we need to jump on this topic from day one, not knowing exactly where it's going to be moving, but really that we are on the forefront and that we really spearhead the trends that are there with let's say with the relation to SAP relevant things. Of course, I mean the AI universe is huge. You cannot cope with everything, but all the topics that have an impact into our work, we are trying to be ahead of things and really trying out things and bringing that into the projects, and especially, helping our clients to leverage the technology and achieve really impact with it. That was our first objectives that we had from day one. And then now the second thing is more, how can we change our ways of working basically, and by that increasing speed or limiting the effort that is necessary, in that sense being more economical with our projects. So that's now the step we are heavily investigating at the moment.
What are the most important things for SAP consulting companies to stay or to be successful in the next years? I mean,
in general, as said, you never know what the trend will be in 2022 when we did the move. Basically, no one thought about. It was clear that AI is out there, but not the Gen AI moment was coming later in November back that year. Of course, everybody was afraid, as of then, everybody was afraid what's coming with this technology. So you can never predict, content-wise what will happen. But from our perspective is, of course, we need, our vivid culture and all our people engaged into what we are doing. And if everybody follows that mission, that we really want to improve, our clients' effectiveness, the efficiency, the agility, the sustainability by using SAP technology and bridging, the business language and the technical language and bring all that together and really create solutions for them in a special way and a special manner. So that's something, if we are really focusing on that idea still and manage to kind of have everybody energized into that idea, I think then this will be a success factor for us still. And as said, I'm not able to predict which technology exactly we are moving, but this is something, that I'm super confident that whatever happens, we have kind of the agility to really jump on that topic and really, kind of, how would I say, leverage the potential of these new things then.
Harald, if you would meet your 30-year younger self, what would be your advice to him?
My advice?
Just do it?
Yeah, something like that. I think, you have a good vision, you have a good idea, just do it. Yes, just do it.
So it's the good formula in believe in yourself, have a vision, follow it.
Yes.
Be bold. Maybe is something. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you my closing questions to each one of you. I want to hear one opinion that you have on transformation, on business, on whatever, that probably most other people disagree with you.
That's a hard question, Alex.
I always have the hard questions for the ending.
Yeah, obviously.
You could say transformation is easy. I mean, probably everybody disagrees, but if you boil it down to what is really necessary, it becomes easy. Of course, you need to, understand the business, understand the technology, and then bring it together, and then with a nice methodology, and then you have all the ingredients to do a good project, and that's how easy it could be. But if you say transformation is easy, everybody would disagree probably.
But that's a good one. If you have the building bricks together, it can be done, and there are plenty of examples existing that it's possible. Yeah, but seldom it is. Definitely. Good. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. It was very interesting.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.
Thanks for having us.